The Fujinon 3.8cm f2.8 is the fixed lens originally paired with the Fujica Compact 35, a full-frame 35mm camera that featured automatic and manual exposure modes along with a zone-based focusing system. The camera was made in Japan and released to the public in 1966. When Fuji began advertising it in photography magazines, they made sure to highlight the superb lens it came with. When it was first released, the Fujica Compact 35 sold for $70. I picked up a non-working copy on eBay for $32. The optical design of this lens consists of 5 elements in 4 groups. It accepts filters with 40.5mm diameter. Aperture ranges from f2.8 to f22 with clicks for full stops only. The diaphragm is made of 4 rounded aperture blades. On the back, this lens is a bit different. After I removed it from the Fujica Compact 35, it had no mount and no focusing helicoid, but adapting it to Sony E-mount is very easy. I used an M25 to M42 adapter and an M42 to Sony E13 to 18mm focusing helicoid. First, I screwed the adapter to the back of the lens, just like so. Once that was done, I attached it to the focusing helicoid and I was ready to use it on my Sony camera. This lens weighs 148 grams, and that includes the adapter and the focusing helicoid. When this lens was part of the Fujica Compact 35, it had a minimum focusing distance of 80 centimeters. But when adapted to Sony E-mount, in the way I just described, that distance shrinks down to only 27 centimeters. The Fujinon 3.8cm f2.8 is a compact, quirky little lens that creates some truly unique images. It's super small and lightweight, and with the right adapter, easy to mount on mirrorless cameras. When I first took it off the Fujica Compact 35 body, I wasn't sure what to expect, but it turned out to be a lot of fun. The sharpness of this lens is surprisingly good in the center at f2.8, especially for close-ups. Now, the lens wasn't built for that. The original minimum focusing distance is 80 centimeters, but if you use it with a focusing helicoid, like I described in chapter 1, you can get some lovely close-up shots. Like many vintage lenses, this one also sharpens up when stopped down a bit and it hits its sweet spot around f11. At that aperture, it's great for landscapes, though the edges still won't be perfect on full frame. On an APS-C sensor though, it performs fantastically well as the crop factor helps eliminate those soft corners. But the real fun starts with the flares. This lens produces some of the wildest flares I've ever seen in a vintage lens. They're so unique and produce a stunning rainbow effect. Definitely a highlight for anyone who loves flares. Another unexpected feature was the total lack of chromatic aberrations. Even with shiny objects or tricky lighting, I didn't see any fringing whatsoever. That was a really nice surprise. Since this lens is wider than typical 50mm, it does show some barrel distortion, but it's nothing too distracting. You'll also notice some heavy vignetting in f2.8, but that clears up by f8. The bokeh is another quirky feature of this Fujinon. The 4-bladed aperture creates round bokeh bows at wide open settings, but as you stop it down, the background blur turns into a checkerboard pattern. It's totally unpredictable, and for me that's part of the fun. When it comes to build quality, this lens won't blow anyone away. It's mostly made out of metal, which is always a plus, but the main downside is the plastic aperture ring, which feels a bit flimsy, but otherwise this lens is decently solid. So at the end of the day, this is a funky little lens, great for experimental shots and especially for close-ups. If you're planning to shoot landscapes or distance scenes, I recommend using it on an APS-C sensor to get the sharpest results. And if you're like me and enjoy trying oddball vintage lenses, this one is a lot of fun. I had a blast shooting with it. For those of you who would like to adapt this quirky lens, I put together a few notes that will guide you through the whole process. The first thing you need to do, once you get yourself a Fujica Compact 35, is to open up the film door. Inside the film door, you will notice 2 round openings located on the metal ring holding the rear lens group. Grab a lens spanner wrench with pointy tips and unscrew it. After you're done, the rear part of the lens will come out. Set it aside for now. You will notice that there are 2 small notches on the retaining ring holding the rest of the lens. Grab your lens spanner wrench, this time with the flat tips, and unscrew the retaining ring. Once that is done, the retaining ring comes off and you're ready to remove the lens. Gently pull the lens out and set it down because it's still attached to the camera by a single wire. Grab some scissors, cut the wire, and the lens is yours. Now take the rear lens group and screw it back to the rest of the lens. After all this is done, you will notice a small pin sticking out from the back of the lens. Grab some strong pliers and carefully remove it, just like so. To open up the lens shutter, you will need a small piece of paper and some tweezers. I used a piece measuring about 1/2 inch tall and 1/4 inch wide, folded in half, and it worked perfectly. Once you have prepared your tools, you're ready to open up the lens shutter. First, set the aperture to f2.8 and the shutter to bulb mode. When you examine the lens, you will notice that there are two levers on the side. They are the shutter cocking lever and the shutter release lever. The shutter cocking lever sits right below the shutter speed markings. Once you have located it, push it on the opposite direction until it stops. Then grab the piece of paper with your tweezers and insert it in the groove where the shutter cocking lever travels. But place it in the opposite end of the groove so there is a small gap between the two. Finally, push the shutter release lever and the shutter opens up and stays open. And that's it. Now you can adjust the aperture freely, just like with any other lens. After all this is done, you just need to attach the adapter and the focusing helicoid to the lens, just like I showed you in chapter 1, and you're ready to use it on your digital camera. I'll put links in the description of the video for all the tools and parts I mentioned earlier. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here at Vintage Optics.